Hello and welcome to this episode of Unleash Your Inner Athlete with me, Julia Pizzicami. Now today I'm going to be talking with, as he likes to call it himself, the Dyslexic Thinker. He's an entrepreneur and a high pressure problem solver with a million-mile journey. Now he's a former extreme skier and snowboarder, so he's no stranger to overcoming adversity. He has 30 years entrepreneurial experience and has mastered the art of solving complex problems, helping his clients thrive in challenging environments. Now he's gone from T-boy to CEO, and his business consulting career spans multiple industries. He ran a racing car and classic car transportation service, seeing him drive 1 million miles across UK and Europe, and trusted by stars, royalty, top-tier events like Goodwood Festival of Speed, and TV shows like Top Gear. He's a property investor, business consultant, startup advisor, mentor, coach, networking co-host and team builder, and has 13 globally published books. And today we're going to be going on his journey from adrenaline-fueled extreme sports to building a successful business empire with a learning difficulty, and how this has shaped his approach when it comes to business and life and success. Also overcoming perceptions, physical challenges, and how this has influenced him to stay active, resilient, and sharp as he ages. Now, this is going to be a conversation packed with life lessons about defying the odds, staying competitive, and thriving in both business and life. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my special guest today, Andrew Batt. Hello, Andrew, and welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am. You have a very, very interesting journey. But before we get into all of that, so everyone can get to know you a little bit better, tell everybody a little bit about what it was like, your journey sort of in the past to where you are now. So how you got to where you are, how you coped with discovering yourself with dyslexic, etc. And just let people understand a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, okay. So I was very, very fortunate that my parents wanted to give me and my younger brother the best education that they deemed appropriate at the time. So we were sent to a local private school, and at 13 years old, I was really struggling with my academics. Sporting wise, I was fine. I actually got into the school off the back of my sporting abilities, because they had their cricket team was massively underperforming, and they were looking for really good cricket players. And fortunately, I met the criteria, so I helped me get in access into the school. But I was really struggling with the academic side of things, and I knew in my own head, and I'd always known growing up that I always thought I understand stuff. I'm a lot smarter than people think I am, but I had trouble. There was a disconnect somewhere, and I couldn't figure it out. And I just thought, well, this is part of growing up because I'm a kid, and surrounded by all kinds of amazing people. So at 13, my English teacher actually noticed something in me, and he noticed that I found it very hard with my academic side of things to communicate. But he said, I see you in the sports environment, I see you in the classroom environment, and I see you in social environment, and you are exceptionally good at conversing with people. And he said, I want you to do a test that's just come out in the schooling system. And it was only being run out in private schools back then, because I'm quite old and grey now. So I'm talking over 30 plus years ago. In fact, over 35 years ago now. So 13 years old, I sat down and I did what I called a multiple guess test. So it's multiple choice, and it was about 40 pages long. And I didn't like exams either, but they said to me, look, it's not an exam, it's an assessment. You just answer what you feel is necessary, and we'll explain more as we go along. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So I finally, at 13 years old, understood what the hell was going on. Now, to the point where I started to understand why I was like that. But I didn't tell anyone else at school. Only my mum, my dad, my little brother knew. None of the rest of our family, cousins, uncles, aunts. It was only at 40 years old that I told my partner that I'm with now that I had it. And it was only 4 years ago that I started telling people outside. So I hid that dyslexia for over 30 years across all my own businesses. I've worked in corporate. I've worked for other people as well. So I hid it from all of them as well. And the thing with a lot of dyslexic people is, especially from my generation, is that we are very, very good at hiding our dyslexia because we're also very, very good at creating workarounds to problems. So you mentioned that in the intro that, yes, I'm a problem solver, because a lot of people will, when everything's going wrong in a scenario, whether it's business, life, car accident, whatever's going on, most people will be running away or panicking, not knowing what to do. For someone like me, everything goes into slow motion and I get super, super hyper focused and I know exactly what to do. And it's not something that I have control over. It's just, that's just built in. That's how my dyslexia works. So obviously over 30 plus years living with myself, I've managed to hone my skills, like you said, across multiple industries. So none of my other teachers knew about this. So I don't remember if in the old days, there used to be a thing called a dunce hat. So it was a hat with a D on it, and it was used in cartoons and all the rest of it. And it was normally the naughty kids, which we're now starting to realise after all this time that most of the naughty kids have either got dyslexia or ADHD or some other neurodiversity, that actually we're not being challenged enough. So what appears to us being naughty is that we're not being naughty, we're just not being challenged in the right way. So it's a lack of understanding. So I got called all kinds of things, and I'll keep it clean on the podcast. But just start rattling through all the D words that are unsavory. That's what I got called by teachers. I got some of the ones that I can say. I got called a dunce. Got called a dinlo. I got called disruptive. So all of these things were being thrown at me in negative ways. And it's taken me 30 years to actually realize that being disruptive it's not necessarily a negative term. So I like to disrupt the way things are done in business and challenge the norms and the status quos, because the world changes. The internet didn't exist when I was at school. Mobile phones were owned by extremely wealthy people or stockbrokers. That was it. And most of our phones still had a big cord that was attached to the wall, and you could walk about 5 feet if you were really posh and you had a long corded telephone. So,
or you had one in the car.
Yeah, exactly. So, and but I didn't get a mobile till I was 22 when I went 21, 22 when I went to university. My mates had all had mobiles for 3 years before that, but I was just like, oh yeah, it's not for me. I don't need it. I've grown up without one. Why do I need one now? So, but yeah, so it kind of, I was always having to try and prove a point when I was at school. And I had one particular teacher that taught me ancient history. And I was fascinated by history because I believe you can learn a lot from the past to help carry you through to the present and the future.
Yeah.
So ancient history fascinated me. But he was real hard on me, and we clashed big time, personalities wise. So he was one of the ones that really put me down. And I sat in a parent teacher meeting at my GCSEs, and he turned around to my mum and my dad, who were sat either side of me, with me in the middle, and he said, please, whatever you do not send Andrew here to do his A-levels, because you will be wasting your money. Now, that's a teacher that's supposed to be supporting and helping to grow children.
Yeah.
And he's telling that to my parents with me sat there, and I'm looking at him directly in the eye. I actually clenched my right fist.
Really?
And my mum just put her hand, she rested it over the top of my right fist. And I was like, yeah, okay, I know it's a bad idea to lean over and punch the guy in the face, because that's what I wanted to do. I was so incensed with, it's like, how dare you say that it should be my choice and my mum and dad's choice as to whether they want to back me or not.
Yeah.
It's not his place to say that. So anyway, we got in the car to drive home, and my dad said, "Oh, how do you feel that went?" I said, "Well, it was certainly interesting." And my mum said, "Well done for keeping your calm." I was like, "Well, I wouldn't have done if you weren't there, and you know that." So, so she said, "Well," so my dad said, "Oh, what do you want to do then?" And he got a little cheeky glint in his eye. I could see in the rearview mirror. So he knew what my answer was going to be before I even did. But I said, "Well, I want to do my A levels there, obviously." So my mum's like, "Okay, well, you know that we'll support you and we'll back you because, you know, we're your parents, all the rest of it." So I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "So what A levels do you want?" And I looked at my dad in the eyes again, and he looked up in the rearview mirror again, glinting. He knew exactly what I was going to say. I said, "Well, I want to do English."
Yeah.
Because my English teacher is the one that helped me find out about my dyslexia, and I want to prove to him that I can do it, as well as myself, and it's also like a mark of respect to him for him to bother to show me that caring. So they're like, "Yeah, fair enough." And then what else do you want to do? Because you've got to have two. So I said, "Well, I want to do ancient history." My mum said, "Well, why do you want to do ancient history?" I said, "Because the guy that just told me that I'm going to be nothing and waste your money and get no A levels, I want him to have to look at me every day for the next 2 years in the face so that I can stick two fingers up at him at the end of my A levels." So my dad's just laughing, and he's like, "I knew you were going to say that, and you got our backing, and we're there for you." So that's exactly what I did. I managed to get an E level, which is still technically an A level. So I got an E grade for that ancient history. But I actually went back 3 years later, sorry, when I was 21. And my little brother was just finishing then. And I turned up to watch him play cricket. And by that stage, I'd already been living abroad. I'd got into my skiing. That was when I was doing my extreme skiing. But in the summers, I came back and I actually built my own sports car with my dad, my mum, and my little brother, because we're quite a big car family as well. And I turned up in this really amazing sports car that I'd built. And as I pulled up, I parked up, and guess who I saw? That ancient history teacher.
Oh,
And he
wow.
looked at me because it was a full-on sports car. And he double take, and I was like, "Oh, hi there." And I walked up to him and I put my hand out and shook his hand. And he said, "Is that yours?" So I went, "Yeah, I've just finished building it about 3 months ago." He's like, "Oh." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing?" Because he was cornered. He couldn't do anything. He had to be polite to me. So he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm actually having the time of my life. I'm living in France for 6 months a year, and I'm living in the UK for 6 months a year." And back then, the tax rules were different. So I said,
Yeah.
"I'm a tax exile in both countries. So I'm living a great life. And oh, look, I get to roll around in my nice sports car as well." And I said, "I just want to say thank you for not believing in me and trying to crush me at 16 years old, because I wanted to prove you wrong. And now I have. You have a nice rest of your life." And then I just walked off. I didn't even let him say anything else to me.
But that's classic, isn't it, with so many people? And it always is surprising your perceptions your teacher have, I guess, because they spend a lot of time with you. But it was similar to me growing up in the 70s and going to school then. How their attitudes or how they put their beliefs on you based on the academics, maybe of the other children in the class, are not actually realizing that maybe your skills not necessarily academic, but there's other benefits and strengths that you have that you can use and do very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I don't get me wrong. I to someone who doesn't necessarily know me, that particular scenario might have sounded very arrogant, but it wasn't my intention to be arrogant, because I built the car for me to enjoy, because I like cars. I wanted to, again, it was something that I wanted to push myself. And this is again where all of the stuff that I've ever done and I've achieved is because I'm pushing myself all the time.
And is that because of your experience going through that school
Yeah.
process and having that, you know, experience with your teachers has sort of driven you to sort of prove yourself constantly, and has actually benefited you in terms of where your life has gone.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that, the fact that my parents gave us huge opportunities with the support that they gave us when we were kids. And I think I've always wanted them to be proud of me and of my little brother. And we don't do things to make them proud, but we want that part of that success to spill over to make them proud.
Yeah.
So they haven't disowned us yet. So we must be doing something
You're doing
right.
something right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So but I think, yeah, a combination of those is what's really driven me forward. And I also had two of my grandparents die when I was quite young. And I was the oldest, or I am the oldest cousin out of our kind of family circle. And that I never really spoke to anyone about that, and it upset me, and I carried that with me for a long time. That they didn't get to see me go through university. I felt like I was a bit robbed by that. So yeah, I think a combination of all that is what drove me back then. But it's interesting how my drivers have changed through life.
Yeah.
And different experiences, and being with different people. My partner that I'm with now, I've got two almost stepsons, because we're engaged, we're not married yet, but they're as good as my stepsons, who I get on very well with. But I met them when they were in their teens.
Okay.
So we've been together for 10 years. And again, my life changed dramatically. I had a very Peter Pan lifestyle before I met them. And then all of a sudden, with that dynamic change, my drive and my passion to get things done was a lot more geared towards the four of us rather than just me.
So it kind of settled you down from, because I guess having that lifestyle, having your skiing and snowboarding career. I mean, tell me a little about that. I mean, that transition from sort of going from this sort of adrenaline fueled sport to then starting to build your businesses, you know, this career you had in we spoke a little bit about your transportation business with cars, and then building that into developing your businesses now, and how, you know, that interaction with your family, that, you know, unit, if you like, has maybe changed how you approach things moving forward.
Yeah, so I started, I was very fortunate. I started skiing when I was 7 years old, and we used to go once a year, and we had lessons right up until I was 18. And I knew the minute I could get out of the school system, I was gone to the Alps. I actually went over there at 16 years old, and I met then what would then become my first landlord. And 2 years later, at 18, I drove out there, packed the car up, drove out on my own, which was a massive thing, across the whole of France to the French Alps, and arrived with this guy. And the first things that we had to do was to renovate his chalet to make it habitable. I walked in the front door and it was mud floors, and we had to put new concrete floors in. The kitchen was going to be my bedroom, so we had to relocate the kitchen. So that was my first serious, I guess, serious renovation that I did. Although we lived on building sites with my mum and dad, and we built cars, we built garages to then build the cars in. So I'd kind of always been around building work anyway, but that was really interesting. And this guy was, this guy is still friends with him now, but he was an ex-British ski instructor. So I was like, this is a right result, because when I go out skiing with him, he's so good, he's going to pull my level up, because I understood by the time I was 18 that the way to get good at something and the way to excel at something, and the fastest way of doing that, is to surround yourself with people that are ahead of you in whatever you're doing. You want to be the slowest person out for a run, the most unfit person in a group, maybe the most overweight person out of all your friends, because what you'll do is you'll look up to your peers and go, if they can do it, why can't I?
Yeah, because the usual way is people gravitate to people who are exactly like them, but that doesn't work if you want to succeed in anything.
No, because if you want to mix with all the people that are the same as you, that's a very nice middle ground comfort level.
Yeah.
And when you're comfy, if you sit down on your comfy chair at home or sit down on the sofa on a weekend and start watching the TV or Netflix or reading a book or whatever it is you do, you're comfortable, right? It's a nightmare trying to get off there. But we've all got legs and, we can move. You just get up and stand up and go and do the washing up or do the hoovering or go out for a walk. But you're in your comfy zone. You're like, oh, I don't want this to end. But the trouble is that doesn't get other things done. And then what happens is those other things start to pile up. So actually, by you being in your comfort zone for too long, you actually start to go backwards, and people don't realize that. And when they do realize it, that's when they go, actually, they start to become a bit more proactive. But yeah, so I then ended up skiing with all of his friends that were all extremely good skiers. So I was always at the back for about the first 3 months. And then 3 months later, I was skiing in the middle of the pack. And by the end of another 2 months, because the ski season's roughly about 20 weeks long, the end of the ski season, I was up the front. So I was like, this is cool. So 19, I went back for my second ski season. And I was in the top 5 skiers for the resort.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to go, right, I'm at the top of my game. How do I push myself further?
Yeah.
So that's when I started getting into the extreme skiing and jumping off cliffs and going off pistes and getting caught in avalanches and all that kind of stuff. And the adrenaline at 19 years old, it's better than any drug on the planet. Not that I've done a load, but it's just when you jump off a cliff, you are literally flying 2, 3, 4 seconds at a time, but you are flying, and it's so difficult to explain the sensation and the achievement that you survived it and the knowledge that you've got the expertise to be able to do it is such. You've got all these emotions that are just exploding inside you, and it is like a drug, and you just want to keep doing it and doing it.
Does it give you a sense of invincibility almost? And can that be a little bit negative in some ways, or do you find that no, that's an absolute positive, because you've obviously had injuries through those years?
Yeah, so at the time it was awesome, because as far as I was concerned, I wasn't hurting anyone.
Yeah.
I was having an amazing time, and it was just brilliant. I was 8 foot tall and bulletproof. I was 19 years old. I was out partying every day of the week. I was earning plenty of money because I was a tax exile. I was doing the stuff that I love doing, and I was smoking 20 cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
I was literally invincible. Then I got back to my next ski season when I was 20, and about maybe beginning of March time, I was due to go out with 2 friends, and I got a phone call in the chalet just as I was walking out the door. So I ran back, grabbed the landline, and it was a phone call. Got clients coming into Geneva Airport. Could I go and pick them up? It's like, yeah, okay, no worries. Phone down, phone up again, phone my mates who were waiting for me to pick them up. Say, guys, you're going to have to go without me. I've got a job. I've got to go and pick some clients up from the airport and bring them up to the resort. I'll catch you guys later. Have a great day. Was completely gutted about it. It was beautiful blue skies. It had snowed the night before. Ideal conditions, right, for everything. But c'est la vie, you've got to do these things. Yeah. So I went off. I got back, dropped the clients off. We'd got stuck in horrendous traffic, so I didn't actually get back till the afternoon. Went to the local bar that we all used to meet up at, that our friends ran. And I walked in there, and I was like, it feels like someone's just died in here. Literally everyone was in tears. And I could see my girlfriend at the time, she was in a booth, just head in her hands, crying. And I'm like, so I obviously went straight to her first. I was like, what's going on? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, what's going on? I've just literally got back from the airport. She didn't even know I'd gone out to the airport. She didn't know where I was. And she also assumed that I was out with the guys, because the night before I'd said to her, I'm going out with the boys tomorrow.
Oh,
But I
right.
didn't have time to phone her, and because you don't do that back then, you didn't phone everyone, say, oh, by the way, change your plans.
Yeah.
So she thought that I was with them, and no one knew where I was, because one of my friends had actually had a really bad accident, and he got airlifted off the mountain straight to the hospital,
Oh, right.
and the
Okay.
other guy was still making his way back. But somehow they'd got a message to say that he'd been in an accident, and then the jungle tell it. I mean, if you put the wrong pants on in the morning in that village, by the time you'd walk to the other end of the village, everyone knew that you got the wrong pants on the other side. It just, the jungle telegraph out there was mental. So, but for some reason, it got lost in translation. So she's then like just overjoyed that I'm there, but still madly crying. So I'm like, this just torrent of emotion happening at me. I was like,
Mm.
what the hell is going on? And she said, our mate Jamie's been in an accident. So we didn't know he was paralyzed then, but it then transpired that 48 hours later, he was airlifted to Stoke Mandeville back in the UK to the specialist unit. And a month later, we drove back from the end of the season, and me and four mates drove literally. We stayed at my mum and dad's the day we drove back, and the next day we were up to Stoke Mandeville to go and see him. And he's paralysed from the waist down for the rest of his life.
And is it at this point you thought, right, so I've got to change my career? I've got to
It
change
was at
what I'm
that
doing?
point. It was at that point when I found out that he'd been that badly injured to be flown, not only to be flown directly to Geneva, but then to Stoke Mandeville. I'm like, you don't get repatriated if you've broken your knee or broken a leg, or that this is major stuff. And that was the last time that I ever jumped off of a cliff. I haven't jumped off a cliff again. I've done a little bit of off-piste skiing, but not very much. And it's only in areas that I know extremely well. So I just dialed it right down, because I thought, I don't want to be forced to give up my skiing and my snowboarding because of that. I want to quit when I'm ready. So
And how easy was it to make that transition from the skiing and then into, because was it at that point you started your transportation service?
it was a few years later that I did the transportation. So I kind of it was at that stage I started to reassess my kind of whole life, really, and go, look, I've got mates of mine that are 10 years older than me. What are they doing now? How have they achieved it? And can I follow in their footsteps, or actually do I need to go on a different path here? And I really wanted to run a bar out there. I knew running a bar was extremely good, and I've got another friend of mine who paid his entire chalet off that was built for him in 10 years from running his bar. Absolutely amazing bar, super nice guy, and I'm so happy for him and his family. But at the time I was looking at it, it was when you could still smoke in bars. And although I was a smoker back then, I was like, do I want to be in a bar 7 days a week, passively, like taking in secondhand smoke? It's not a great idea. I'm, like I said to you, I'm not daft, although I was smoking, which you might argue I was daft, but I didn't want to actively put myself in that position intentionally. And the financial returns weren't worth the offset of the damage that I knew that I would end up doing to my health long term. So I was like, I've got to do something else. I'm going to go back to the UK, and I'm going to go to uni, just so I've got a bit of paper that I can fall back on. If I come back skiing afterwards, then great, but I need to have a break, because I'm too emotionally involved in it. I need to go away, look back at it, and go, do I want to go back there or not? So I went and did that. Went and did a couple of years at uni, and then fell out of there. Went back skiing because I was like, I missed it so much. I was back there for the whole of January. My best mate at the time had a floor plan company for drawing floor plans for estate agents, and it was his company and four others that actually instigated floor plans that we see in estate agents' details as a normal now. So I was right at the cutting edge of that, and I loved that job, but I had a carrot dangled of partnership. And after 3 years, I was like, I need out of this. So by that time, I'd started to property invest with my mum and my brother. So we bought a place out in the Alps where I lived. We then sold that. I bought a place in the West Country that I still have today. My brother bought a place in Oxford, which we converted from a residential to an HMO. My mum bought another place in the southeast to start building up the portfolio. So did all that, and then left the floor plans, got back into the car stuff because there's another passion of mine, and started working on race cars and replica GT40s, which was basically a Ford from the 60s that Ford built in order to beat Ferrari at Le Mans, and it was a big war. They've actually done a film about the whole thing, not that recently, or not that long ago, sorry. But after that, that's what led me into the transport, because we used to pick clients' cars up, and I thought, this is a service here, and I've always done service-based businesses that I've run, and I thought, there's a lot of these guys are very busy, like earning the big bucks in the city or running businesses or manufacturing plants, and they don't have time to be messing around, loading their car up and bringing it to us. And so I had loads of people saying to me, look, lots of people do this transport stuff. There's no point in you doing it. And I thought, that's exactly why I'm going to do it, because there's loads of other people doing it, but they're not going to do it as good as I can. In my head, I knew that I could offer more. And I thought, well, if I offer a better service, then why would you not go with a better service, especially if I'm matching the price or doing it lower? So that's what I did. And that's when my transport adventure started.
Because did you tell me something about a 10-minute window?
Yeah,
Which seems like crazy.
Yeah, so my unique selling point, I decided, I sat down and I worked out that I could be anywhere in Europe within a 10-minute window.
Wow.
Because I'd identified that most of most of my clients, or most of the people that I wanted to be my clients, they're very, very busy people. And when you work around super wealthy people, they're interested in money, but their main interest is time, and time is of the essence. So there's some of my clients I've never met face to face, but I've met their wives, I've met their children. I've sat down, I've picked their car up, I've been invited to have breakfast with the kids before they go to school, because I've got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to arrive there to suit their needs. So they've said, well, come and have breakfast with us because you need breakfast, and then load the car up and go off. So I'm like, okay, great, thanks very much. But I'd never met the client, I'd never met the husband. Yeah. Or vice versa. There were some wives that were they were big bosses of companies and they were racing cars, but they didn't have time. So it was the husbands that I was meeting, and they were house husbands. So it was kind of role reversal. So it was fantastic to meet all these people. And what was really, really amazing with it is that some of these clients would travel with me. So if we were going to a race meeting, so I had one client where we went to race meetings twice a month. So I would get to his house on the Friday, load the car up with him, get all the race gear in the back of the vehicle, and then drive off. But the beauty of that is that I'd then be chit-chatting with that person for 2, 3, 4, 8, 10 hours there and back. I got to learn a hell of a lot about business.
Yeah.
Over those 10 years at a million miles.
And did that also help with getting contacts for building what now is your consultancy business? So it sort of led you on that path there, because you're obviously getting all these contacts as well.
Yeah, so some of them I'm still in touch with. We had this really weird thing called COVID that randomly got slotted into my world, like everyone else's. So and that changed a lot of people's paths. So some of the people that were, some of my old clients, they passed away because they were older. Some of them are tailing out of the racing because they're getting to the stage where they're in their 70s or 80s and they've got other priorities. And some of them are still going. So I kind of wanted to start afresh with what I'm doing now. And then I thought, well, I can circle back to those guys because they already know me. They know how I operate. I want to get a bit more established with what I'm doing so that I can then go back to them and say, hey guys, look, I'm doing this, if it's of any interest to you, or, and then, so that's kind of where I'm at with that stuff at the moment. So I actually started from zero 5 years ago, and I wanted to I wanted to create a whole nother network,
Yeah.
which I've done and I continue to do to this day.
Fantastic. And how important would you say, with everything you've been through, how important would you say your health and wellness is to sort of keeping you going, keeping you active, and keeping that resilience there so you can stay high performance and competitive? Because obviously as we get older, you know, health challenges come in, problems, you're more at risk of problems. Do you think it's important for you to sort of value your health and wellness as well as, you know, maintaining all that, the other important things you need to do, priorities you have?
Yeah, hugely. I would say it's actually probably my number 2 priority. My number 1 priority is to my family.
Yeah.
And my number 2 priority, it kind of flitters. It's almost like a joint number 1, because without me being healthy, I can't continue to be a high performing person, and without me being high performing, I can't protect my family. So it's they kind of go hand in hand, really. I'm very fortunate that my other half is a nutritionist, which obviously we've discussed in the past. And whilst a lot of people were putting on weight in their pants over COVID, I was actually losing weight and getting myself healthier.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, COVID, actually. And I think it's important for people to kind of have a think about this, and certainly your listeners as well, that from the age of 18 till COVID happened, I'd set up a number of different businesses. And one of the things that really frustrated me when you start up a business is that you almost need to hit pause so that you can run around and scurry around everywhere to get everything sorted, and then go, okay, now we can go again. And hey guys, I'm here, right? That's not a reality, except it was in COVID. And where a lot of people dropped the ball, a lot of people stopped doing stuff, a lot of people stopped work, a lot of people did put on that extra weight because they weren't looking after themselves. I saw that as a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
To go, do you know what? This is the time. I've wanted this, not COVID, but I've wanted the pause button all my life. I don't know how long this is going on for, and I don't know if this is going to be our lives. We never knew that we'd be back here today, going out, seeing people, all the rest of it. We didn't know. No one knew.
No.
So I was like, well, I've got to assume we're not going to do that. And if we are, I've already got that covered because I know how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And if we aren't, I will have built a business that's sustainable. So at the same time, I'd found out that I'd got high cholesterol, and I'd also got high blood pressure as well.
Yeah.
And so the doctor says to me, do you know why you've got high blood pressure? I'm like, well, probably because I run multiple businesses. I mean, that's normally quite stressful. And I was kind of joking and not really taking it that seriously, to be honest with you. And he said, no, it's because you're overweight. And I'm 6'2", so it's quite easy for me to hide the odd few extra kilos without people noticing.
Yeah.
And what I learned was that actually where I thought I was getting a bit chunkier and there was a bit more of me for my other half to cuddle on the outside, what I didn't understand was the fat grows both ways. So where it was growing outside of me on my body and I could see my body getting bigger, it was actually going internally as well and pushing on my internal organs, which was increasing my blood pressure, which obviously leads to a heart attack eventually, or one of the symptoms. So I was like, right, I've got to sort this. At the same time, my other half was very, very heavily involved into her nutrition, and she's like, right, she obviously loves having me around annoying her, so she wanted me to be around for longer. So she's like, right, you're going to become a client of mine. I'm like, cool, let's do this. I don't have time to figure out how to fix all of this.
Yeah.
I need to do what I'm good at, which is all the business stuff and the networking. So she then helped me through it, and I lost 20 kilos over COVID.
That's amazing.
Unnecessary. And it's this is a whole nother podcast on its flipping own, to be honest with you. I had less aches and pains. I struggle with muscular pains because of some of the injuries that I've got from my extreme skiing. I got into motorbikes in my 30s, so I got into a couple of off-roading accidents that I smashed my pelvis up quite badly. And also driving 1,000,000 miles in 10 years, I shrunk my hip flexors. So my pelvis is constantly trying to roll forward, and that overstretches my back muscles. So I've done a lot of damage to my body, which I can maintain, but when you've got the extra weight on you, it creates so
More
much extra
pressure.
inflammation. Yeah, more pressure and more inflammation, and that inflammation creates more pain, and it's just a vicious circle. So
it's like having to use that nutrition to take that initial, get the weight down, get the inflammation down, and then start strengthening your body again, correcting all the imbalances and dysfunction there to get you at peak performance again, physically and mentally and emotionally, in every part.
This is it. And by doing all of that, it meant that I slept better. So during the sleep, I was getting the proper natural repairing happening to my body. So, you know, I used to joke, I'd be like, look, I'm a machine. I run on 5 to 6 hours sleep. I'm all good. And people were just like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, it's cool. Just keep going. And a lot of the time I was running on all the bad natural drugs that the body produces, which would, if I'd kept on going that way, would have caused me a lot more health issues later on. So and again, working with Catty, my other half, she's like, look, we need to get you so you're operating great now, but we also don't want to be looking at my nutrition and looking at my health when things go wrong. So it's like a preemptive thing. So I'm the things that, if I'd kept smoking, if I'd kept drinking like I had, if I kept eating all the sweets that I used to do, and having the lifestyle that I had, not having enough sleep, not eating the right stuff, in my mid-50s, I would have keeled over. I'm not there yet in my mid-50s. So, but at 38 years old when we met, which was 10 years ago, I had such bad back pain that she used to have to pull me out of the car.
Wow.
Right, and she's a lot smaller and more petite than me, and she was having to pull this big lump out of the car. I could fall into the car and I could drive the car, but I couldn't get out. I physically couldn't lift myself out. And to look at me, you think, don't be daft. But I just didn't. I could not do it. So she would pull me out of the car. So now at 48 years old, I've got more energy than when I was 38. I've got more drive, more determination. I feel healthier. I feel fitter. I sleep better. And the only thing that I changed in all of that time is my nutrition.
Yeah. So what would you, for anyway, just to sort of wrap up, I guess, is kind of what would be your top tip, top bit of advice that people could do today if they're experiencing something, you know, similar to your story in a way? What would be your advice to someone, to first thing they could do from today that is really going to kickstart that journey of getting healthier, getting fitter, and keeping that performance here well into later life, so they can keep performing in business and in life and have that quality of life as well?
Make it more of a priority. It's that simple. And everything that I do, I try and simplify as much as possible. One, because it makes my dyslexia easier to deal with, but two, because the simplest stuff I've done in my life is the stuff that I've had the most success with. And if you're not healthy yourself, you will underperform, and if you underperform, you're not going to get the same success. So you have to look after yourself. It's that old adage of being in the aeroplane and the gas masks come down, and people go, oh yeah, well I'd put it on my child and I put it on this person, that person, and actually what you're supposed to do is put it on yourself, because the minute you put it on yourself, you're oxygenated. You are then running at your peak performance to actually then help other people. Whereas if you didn't put it on yourself, you'd probably last 4 or 5 people that you'd help before you then keel over. And if no one helps you, that's it, game over.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, and then you're no good to yourself or anyone else.
No, exactly. So it's I would say that I now make my health a priority 99% of the time, and everything else goes. And that's also, in today's world, it's psychological as well. It's not just about physical or your weight or anything like that.
No, it's now everything. It's a very holistic approach now.
Yeah, too much social media, stop it, get off it. You know, I time allocate time with family as well.
Yeah.
Which sounds
I guess
really
that's really
harsh.
Well, it's kind of important to manage your time well, so you get all the things done you need to get done, but you also have that quality time with your family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the main thing is discipline. If you want stuff bad enough, you will be disciplined. You need to be disciplined to fulfill achieving those goals.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Andrew. I mean, this has just been an amazing conversation and very inspiring. And those are great tips for people to take away with you and learn from. I think everyone can learn from that and start implementing, getting it a priority and start being a bit more disciplined and focused. And they can have and achieve everything that you have achieved in your life with some sacrifices.
Yeah. No,
All right.
I wish them well, and thank you very, very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
It's a pleasure, and I definitely think there's room for another conversation.
Yeah, of course. Anytime you like, I'm more than happy to come back and have another one.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew Batt, for joining me today here on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. I'd like to thank you and everyone for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.